Week 13 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I have as sleeper options this week. The first guy, Mike White of the New York Jets. The Jets here, a lot of people hyped up now about Mike White for this New York Jet team, and no doubt about it, last week he went out there in week 12 and had a monster ball game, 315 pass yards, 3 touchdowns in that one. But obviously this Chicago Bear defense is decimated. They also traded two of their best defensive players at the NFL trade deadline with Robert Quinn and obviously Roquan Smith to the Baltimore Ravens. So right here, good matchup on paper. Week 13 here at the Minnesota Vikings. That give up the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So this is a ball game where I believe the Jets will be trailing most of the game in this one, or trying to play catch up, where he's going to have to throw the football a lot. And believe it or not, the Jets have a decent amount of weapons on this team. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, who had a good rapport with Mike White last season in the few games he started, and Tyler Conklin's a serviceable tight end. But anyway, Mike White here, I'm not expecting another 30-plus fantasy day here from him, but anywhere from 17 to 20 fantasy points is definitely possible. And he's available right now if you're really in a pinch for a sleeper option in 88% of fantasy leagues. The next guy is Kenny Pickett of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Kenny Pickett, I've been mentioning him for a couple weeks now as a guy that's starting to get it going for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. And over the last couple weeks here, the numbers have been pretty mediocre to decent. Week 10 versus the Saints, 199 pass yards, 51 rushing, and a rushing touchdown. Week 11 versus Cincinnati, 265 pass yards, a touchdown, 14 rushing yards. And Week 12 at Indianapolis on Monday Night Football, 174 pass yards, 6 rush attempts, 32 rushing yards, and a 2-point conversion. So right here, he's going to get you anywhere from 3 to 5 fantasy points pretty much weekly on the ground. It's about consistency and throwing those 2 touchdowns or going 1-for-1 with a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown. So right now, the Falcons give up the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And right here, I think he could have a decent ball game. He's got decent weapons in George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, and Pickett right now, a guy still learning, but available in 88% of fantasy leagues, and a guy that uses a sleeper option in deeper leagues. And the third and final quarterback I have as a sleeper is Jared Goff for the Detroit Lions. So anytime this Lion team's at home, Jared Goff, for the most part, he's going to put up about 20 fantasy points on his home turf for this Detroit Lion team. So the last few weeks here for Goff, Week 10 at the Bears, 236 pass yards, a touchdown, 14 rushing. Week 11 at the Giants, only 165 passing yards. And then Week 12 versus Buffalo in a Thanksgiving thriller, 240 pass yards and 2 touchdowns. So right now, this could be a mini shootout between two teams that are pretty similar in terms of offense, and they play no defense with the Jaguars and the Lions. So right now, the Jaguars give up the 9th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And Jared Goff right now, I think in 12-team leagues, he could go deeper. He's definitely a quarterback sleeper this week. And he's available as well in 51% of leagues if you need a quarterback. So that's a few quarterbacks I have as sleepers here for Week 13 of the fantasy football season.